Hello, Matt.
Hey Graham, really good to see you.
Great to see you. Welcome, everyone, to Crazy in Love, the podcast where two therapists talk about all things to do with relationships. In this episode, Matt, we're looking at the risk that sometimes we overcomplicate relationships, and that
Yes.
sometimes with some couples, maybe many times with many couples,
Yep.
the diagnosis is often more simple than that, and potentially the solution to their problems might be more simple than a lot of people, including couples therapists, might
Yeah.
realize.
Yeah. I think that's right, isn't it? Yeah. I think couples therapists overcomplicate it. I think books about relationships often overcomplicate it, partly because they're trying to sell a new idea or framework, or trying to generate some novelty around the diagnosis and the prescription. And I think couples themselves often prefer an explanation which is a bit more sophisticated or esoteric, but sometimes off the point. For me, they'll behave really badly towards one another and assume they've grown apart, or they won't do very kind things to one another. They'll speak in a disrespectful way, and they will say it's because there's an incompatibility baked in from the get-go or something along those lines.
We like to think of ourselves as slightly more complicated people in complicated dynamics. And that's the reason why we've got ourselves into problems rather than we've just taken our eye off the ball on some pretty simple, repetitive behaviors.
It's not terribly flattering, is it? That if it's a simple repeated behavior and you've chosen not to do it, all of the responsibility for that lies with you, and you can fix it, not easily, but you can fix it. Whereas if it's something more sophisticated or harder to get hold of, then maybe it's not your fault.
And maybe there's something there about the implementation as well, that the implementation of those simple behaviors is actually quite hard. The
Yeah, very. Yeah, yeah,
repetitive small changes are much harder than
yeah.
grand gestures on Valentine's Day to try and recapture something.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's quite right. You got
Couple
any examples of that? I mean, I guess you gave one there. I think of people who throw money at a weekend away. They'll go somewhere fancy. They'll go out the country, those kind of things. Or they'll do like an elaborate date night where the meal is high end or, long lingering. And those things I think are often, sort of get in the way, don't they? One, they make conversation very difficult because it's intense and it's over a long period of time. It's not really much fun going on around you, but I think it's sort of you're backing the wrong horse in those moments. You're sort of you're making it into a big deal, and it's more ordinary than that. It will be, I think, usually it will be a disrespect in the tone, or a failure to appreciate the other one, or genuinely to stop and ask them how things are going, and to be available to listen and kind of give a damn.
Yeah, that slow drift. I think it's difficult to change because habits that have become ingrained in life generally are
Yeah,
hard to overturn. We see that in addiction,
yeah,
in weight loss and exercise. Those
yeah,
habits are very, very difficult to overturn.
yeah,
But we,
yeah,
I think we like to think of ourselves, particularly if we're high functioning and high performing in other aspects of our lives, we like to think of ourselves as able to make those switches. Oh, I
yeah,
just need to
yeah,
be a bit more thoughtful to my
yeah,
partner. Okay, that I
yeah.
understand that. Let's just go ahead and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you and I are often talking to quite sophisticated people in the world who are doing well professionally, often towards the top of their professions, doing complicated things in their work life. And this can seem very basic and ordinary next to, some complicated computations that are done at work, or some like intractable challenges that you face on a huge infrastructure project, or whatever the example might be. This is it's very prosaic, isn't it? What are we saying? Like, don't be rude to one another, apologize properly and promptly, that kind of thing. Criticize your partner less, appreciate them more.
Yeah, but underneath that, maybe we can get onto that, is maybe some more complexity than those statements indicate. So a lot
Yeah,
of people come back and say, I don't criticize. I'm just pointing out the way I prefer things, for example, something like
yeah,
that. So there might be a mindset shift and some quite hard work there to understand what those on the surface quite simplistic statements or prescriptions really mean in terms
yeah,
of your.
yeah. Yeah, there's a failure to recognize that sometimes, that those things really matter. I don't actually get much pushback when
Okay.
I slow the conversation down and ask for an example of, and sometimes I can be a bit tiresome, I think, about this. I really do want the detail. Like when couples laugh and say, "Oh, I wish I could play you the recording," or "I wish you could sit," I kind of wish that too. I'd really like to see how the argument is builds up, where it comes from and how it progresses. But when we do that in the session, as I often do with people, usually, like, my sort of favorite line is, "This is not fallen from the sky or been caught from the water supply. Someone has been rude, someone has failed to appreciate, someone has done something, not intentionally, but that the other person has taken offense to, and that's why there's a snapback or pushback, or something sharp has been said, or someone's turned away because they're like, well, what's the point? This is always how this goes. You're always rude to
Mm,
me," those kind of things. And that is the beginning of a progression of a fairly substantial argument or disagreement or huff or sulk.
mm.
So I
But
think when you index on those things and try and draw them out, I think couples, in my experience, will recognize that they're doing those things. I think they sometimes want to find out what's underneath that, and they sometimes want a bit more sophistication. But I don't know, if it was another skill that we were deconstructing, musicianship or sportsmanship, we would go to the behavior, wouldn't we? The racket face is not sufficiently open, or you're not transferring weight through the ball in the way that you think you are.
so let's just spend a few minutes on why we get so caught up in complexity then. If that
Mm.
if that is true, and that's the best way of supporting couples. I mean, listeners might know that we're both experts in attachment to some degree, in attachment theory, the kind of science of how early relationships shape who you are and how you behave in adult relationships. We agree that, for example, serious trauma affects how someone might be in a relationship. There's a lot of training and books and
Yeah,
couples therapists out there that would call themselves trauma focused or attachment focused
yeah,
therapists that would lead with,
yeah,
tell me about your history, help me understand how you act in
yeah,
relationships, help you on so I can understand whether you're compatible as a couple and what sort of, they
yeah,
might use terms like dynamics or cycles or
yeah,
pattern
yeah,
answers that you get lost in from that
yeah,
attachment perspective.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Why do we do that as an industry? What's going on there?
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, do you have the beginnings of an answer to that? I've been wanging on. I mean, what's your thought?
Well,
You've
I think
maybe
there's
moved
incentive.
furthest from that attachment perspective into a more. I mean, I don't think you've moved entirely away from it. I suppose that would be my
Well,
only caveat before I throw it back to you.
so,
I
so
do think that's of some use.
I
I
think it's
just
of a lot of use, but I
Yeah,
think what it does, just to come back to your point
yeah,
about behaviors, is attachment for me feels like the pillar underneath the attachment. That's sorry, the behaviors. So it kind of is almost an
uh-huh.
explainer of behaviors. Okay, your
Yeah,
behavior
sure, agree.
in certain
Yeah,
situations, your attachment
yeah,
history helps us understand why in certain behaviors you act like that. But the
yep,
prescription is always, okay, well, we've got to do something about that. We've got to change the behavior. We've got to help you
yeah,
do that, even if it's
yeah,
uncomfortable, even if it's working against the grain.
yeah.
I think in terms of incentives within the industry and within the culture, there is a sense of we need to overcomplicate this. We need,
Yeah, sure. I agree. I think that's a good answer. I mean, say some more, but just to heartily agree with you on that point. I think we want to be sort of doctors or very clever people, don't we? Because the nuts and bolts of it are often painfully simple. But I do think that is true of so many areas of life. Our old trade in government,
agree.
usually about resource and effort and political will, isn't it? Rather than a very clever policy wheeze.
I think in some ways psychology is even more simplistic, even though obviously the human brain is incredibly complex. A lot of the treatments in psychology,
Yeah,
particularly around anxiety disorders, obsessive compulsive disorder, when you describe them to someone, are
yeah.
so ludicrously
Be
simplistic
simple.
that it
Yeah,
feels almost offensive to have
yeah,
trained for years and spent
yeah.
tens of
Sure,
pounds
sure.
to get to a point where you're saying to someone, yeah, but you need to do it anyway.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah, 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 yeah,
How it feels when you do that thing. And when you're in a room with a very bright couple who are
yeah,
very successful in their lives, in
yeah,
effect saying to them, yeah, but that thing you do, you need to kind of stop doing it.
yeah,
This feels almost sometimes insultingly simple. I
yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. I think it does, and that is sometimes the reaction. Oh, is that it? Can we not go a bit deeper? And I think you can go a bit deeper. I think you can get to the attachment issues, where it comes from, what the pattern of
Yeah.
relationship history looks like and what your start in life looks like, which I think does lay down a template. How could we be anything other than shaped by the events of our life? That seems to me sort of uncontroversial, fairly straightforward thing to say, but it doesn't get you that far, really. Just to expand your point, I can work out like exactly why it is. In some senses, I am impatient and an irritable, impatient driver, for example. But the only thing that will moderate that is some behavior in the real world, baking in additional time to factor in, traffic and the vagaries of all of that, putting something on maybe as a podcast or some music, which is kind of soothing or pleasant or whatever, remembering that my children are in the back of the car and don't necessarily want to hear me ranting or raving about things. Those were the things that might check that kind of behavior. Knowing like why that thing, whatever it might be, trips you up, I think still leaves you tripped up and on the floor.
I think the only thing that misses is the couple's partnership element of it, that there's understanding and insight into someone's history does create the opportunity, the openness for empathy, for understanding, for a bit of patience.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that strongly. I think there's perspective taking, isn't there? And I think I've heard you talk about that a lot, that you're not going to persuade the other person, but you could take their perspective and you could understand why this is
Yeah.
not landing with them or why they see the world differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big, big part of it. And it certainly helped me in my relationship to understand that we both come at this from a very different point of view. So it's not somebody being intransigent or pig-headed or failing to understand. It's just we are the product of our histories. And I think the point I hear you make is that you're not necessarily going to unravel that or radically transform that. You're not going to put that through 180 degrees and make it point in another direction. It's just like, okay, so we're really, really different. We see this differently. We have different preferences for spending, different preferences for schooling, different preferences for team sports. Those are the sort of examples that come up a lot when I talk to couples who are also parents, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. So for someone who's in any kind of relationship with you, knowing that you get irritable or angry in certain or hot tempered in certain situations,
Easy.
it
Yeah.
doesn't give you the free reign to just say, well, this is who I am, accept me for who I am.
No,
But
no.
what it does do is it gives someone moment to go, okay, he's responding in a different way to how I respond here.
Yeah.
I've got the choice to kind of to double down on that feeling. I've got the choice to introduce this conversation right here, right now.
You're just cutting out a little bit there. I don't know if that's my end or it's on the recording. Maybe just say the last 10 seconds again, would you?
Yeah, so it just gives someone who's with you in those moments the opportunity to kind of step back a bit and say,
Yeah.
do I want to have that conversation
Yes.
right
Yeah.
here, right now? What's
Yeah.
going on for him? Can we wait another hour to have this conversation? Can I actually just check in with him and just, is there anything
Yeah.
I can do? So it's the opportunity for some sort
Yeah.
of understanding rather than
Yeah.
just dismissing it as this is who I am, take me or leave me, which
Yeah.
I think in our culture we hear a bit too much recently.
Yeah, no, I agree. Maybe I want to say a couple of things. One, I think in that the model of addiction recovery, like one of the most sort of prominent models of addiction recovery, 12 step would be like in Alcoholics Anonymous, you would announce yourself as an alcoholic alongside your name, right? That's how you would frame every contribution to a meeting. It's how you would think of yourself, not because you are going to go and get rip-roaringly drunk and be a menace to other people and their, good lives. It's that you're putting that front and center because it's a really, really big deal, and you're going to have to take a series of firm intentions on the back of it. So I think knowing that oneself and then partner knowing that is all to the good. It's not an indulgence. Well, I am this, so what can I do? It's more I am this, so I need to do a bunch of things, and those bunch of things don't change, right? They're relatively simple in a relationship, aren't they? We're going to need to advocate for our point of view. We're going to need to negotiate. We're going to need to take turns, take perspective, talk to one another with a bit of courtesy when we don't see it the same, back off. And sometimes just lump it, right? The only thing I'd add to what you said is like to check in. It could be like, oh, not this again. I think it could be quite grumpy. I think it could be like, I wish this didn't happen so much. This is not the thing that I love most about them. That is, I think, sometimes where therapy land goes nuts, that we've got to be like endlessly sympathetic or not irritated by those things or not want it to be different. I think you could want it to be different and accept that that is unlikely. Change the things that are amenable to change and sort of leave the rest, right? Accept the rest.
I think there's the image that I often carry in my head about therapy is that it wants to look under every rock, and it
Sure. Yeah.
want to look under every rock. It
Yeah.
kind of wants to
Yeah.
change everything that's under those rocks and
Yeah.
better,
Yeah.
rather than just some rocks as a couple you want to look under
Yeah.
and change it. A lot of the
Yeah.
rocks you probably just need to leave where they are and accept
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they are what they are and get on with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You wanted to talk maybe a little bit about, when we're talking about simplicity, about simple metrics as well, that, you know, that,
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit. I mean, not a ton, right? But I
yeah,
mean, we were back and forth on something, weren't we? Which I think was from the FT a couple of weekends ago, where he was, I can't even remember who it was, whose work he was relating, but he was saying like one of the simple metrics in relationships is whether people have sex more than they argue. And
yeah,
the reason I put that your way and introduce that in this discussion is because I think therapists don't index on that as strongly as they might. So what I typically see before I want to get into a conversation about compatibility and whether our life choices have taken us in a different direction, are we respecting one another, appreciating one another, and having as nice a time as we can? If all of those things are in place and you've grown apart, well, there probably is a conclusion to come to. But if you're talking about incompatibilities or values changing or whatever else, and you're being awful to one another, that's the thing I'd go to first.
mm,
That's the thing I'd correct, because there's a lot of pain in divorce, right? So I want to take that bit really seriously before anyone separates. Are we doing this as well as we can? And rather than attachment styles or love languages or any of the stuff that gets talked about in relation to how a couple, keep the relationship good. I want to go to the obvious stuff. Do we spend any time together having fun? Do we laugh together? Do we appreciate one another? Do we take the other person's side and point of view when it's helpful to do so? Not all the time, but at least some of the time. If we're humiliating them in public or teasing them or comparing them unfavorably to an ex, that's not about we've drifted or any of that stuff. That's just you being mean in the moment, and you can absolutely make a choice not to do that.
I think the point about the metric of happy couple is likely to be having more sex. I think it's more that if you're doing all of those things that you just listed, you're treating each other with respect, you're having fun together, you're laughing together, presumably there's
Yeah.
physical attraction that's still there. Chances are you're going to be
Yeah.
having more sex. You're going to want.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I don't think it's a finding of very much, is it? But I do
No,
think the
but I think
value in
it's
sorry.
helpful. I think it's helpful in the sense of
Yeah.
what you're just saying, that if you are acting in those relatively simple ways
Yeah.
towards each other, you're
Yeah.
creating the conditions for contentment and
Yeah.
happiness and
Sure.
playfulness and physical attraction
Yeah.
and flirtation in the couple that
Sure.
is likely to make you both feel wanted, desired.
Yeah, I agree, and I think for some couples you could put the behaviour first. I don't mean to be too sort of crude or crass about this, but you could have sex and rediscover the feelings. You could have sex and realise what you like about one another. That can be a uniting kind of bringing together thing. So I think sometimes people are trying to get themselves in the mood or feel really motivated, and if it was the gym or a work task that you didn't want to do, you would get on and do it. And usually, when it's the gym or it's an early morning walk or run or swim, we usually feel better afterwards. And that isn't a million miles off sex. If someone doesn't want to have sex, they shouldn't have sex. I'm not here to tell them that. But it can sometimes,
That's the
you know,
clip. That's the
it
so.
can, it can sometimes be a good idea. If that's not a horrible or unpleasant prospect, like that would be a nice thing to do, as would spending a bit of time together doing something else that isn't childcare or running the house or remembering to pay an insurance or send someone another email about a thing.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I hear people describe really busy, quite stressful, labored lives, children up far too late in the evening for my money in the spaces that should probably have become adult spaces in the evening. And then they say they never get time together or they never have any fun together or they never get to relax together. They're not even watching their show or eating their food at the time that would suit them. Everything is around work or family life or some combination of all of those stresses and strains. And I think that's the other bit of this. Like, are we going out and are we doing anything? Are we marking out time for the couple, for the adults, if everything is family time and very little is time that you alone have or you alone as a couple have? I think you're in trouble. So I think sometimes therapists and psychological support goes to, I mean, I suppose it wouldn't it, goes to a psychological answer or a deep
Mm-hmm.
answer or something which feels I don't think that's always useful.
Mm.
or there are other things to say as well. And there are some things I would put maybe ahead of attachment styles.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think those things, how you organize the kids, how you mark out time for the relationship, I think they have something to do with attachment styles, but not loads. I think attachment theory is, I draw on it. I think it's really valuable, but it's something like a hammer or a screwdriver or a wrench, and it's not fit for every task or challenge. Like, you'd want to use that judiciously, selectively.
I think even when you're talking about insecurity from an attachment perspective, in any sense, that the move from feeling insecure to secure is through
It's
behaviors,
through behavior. Yeah, sure.
through
Yeah,
kind of, okay,
yeah,
how is
yeah,
someone need to feel
yeah,
important to
yeah,
another person,
yeah,
important physically, important emotionally,
yeah,
important practically as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
Those things are through behaviors. They're through gratitude. They're through, what do you do when you come home at the end of a busy day? Do you make each other feel like you've missed each other even slightly? Like that, when you say goodnight to each other, is it heartfelt, or are you just kind of, in effect, kind of saying goodnight to someone who you're not even really registering? Are you putting your phone down when you talk to them?
sure.
I think it's stuff like that that is more
Agree.
important ultimately in making someone feel secure in a relationship,
Yeah,
rather than endless conversations about
yeah,
why you feel the way
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
feel.
I think, yeah, hard agree to all of that, and also I think it makes you feel better, doesn't it? You're doing your bit. Like, we know how we should behave in a relationship. No one feels good at the end of a day if they behaved in a disrespectful way to other people like that, and unless you're somewhere way off the
Yeah.
sharp crazy, you need to feel like you've done your job, as a parent, as a partner, as an employee, as a founder, whatever you are, that you've done it to a high standard, et cetera, et cetera. You're responsible for big sums of money or other people's lives, or decisions about allocation of services, or whatever it is. You need to feel you've done that well, and that I think applies even more so at home. So I think, yeah, it's good for the other person, but I mean, it's just good for you. It's good for me to get up, and it's good for me to take part in family life, even when I'm tired, even when I could do with 20 more minutes in bed. Those things are not, are nowhere near as valuable as we have said as a society they are. That kind of self-care, self-care, self-care. It's like, well, actually, the thing that gets you feeling good, the thing that gets you out of addiction recovery, is doing stuff for other people. It's all being of service, and being genuinely useful to others turns out to be a real shot in the arm.
Mm, mm.
I was going to do 15 seconds on football. Could you bear it?
I mean, I can bear it. I'll mock it, but I can.
So people will try and ask Wayne Rooney why he was such a confident player and why he was so confident in front of goal, and his answer is practice. So it's really to make you right that, like, that feeling comes through the behavior. How do you nail down the pen? How have we got pretty good at pens? How have we come to believe that Harry Kane will score,
Yeah.
even if he needs a second bite at it? And it's just relentless practice, right? He is confident in that situation, not because he's chanted incantations into a mirror, or he's affirmed himself, or he's ordered it up from the universe. He takes a lot of practice pens.
Mm.
There's nothing more to it, really, than that at root. So
Yeah.
it's just the right behavior, isn't it? Again, 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 again.
Yeah.
You can do this. You've practiced this in a bunch of situations. We know
Yeah.
we can solve a conflict. We know we can speak up for what we want. We know that the other person will apologize when they've been in the wrong. We know that we're willing to do that. And we've got confidence in this relationship in a bunch of situations. And when you don't do that, and you don't have that sort of stack of proofs or evidence, I think that's when it feels shaky
Yeah.
and wonky and like we can't do this.
I think a lot of those examples, and I'd include this in couples work as well, have a kind of sequence or an order or a script to them. In the set, like I saw Kane take a penalty the other night, and I noticed again how he puts the ball down. I think he borrowed it from like Johnny Wilkinson or whoever.
Yeah.
Puts the ball down, takes a step back, looks up in the crowd, obviously looks at someone in the crowd or a few people, focuses on them,
Yeah.
takes a breath,
Yeah.
turns back to the ball, looks at the ball. He's obviously made up his mind.
Yeah.
Sequence there and a kind of repetition and a
Yeah.
script
Sure. Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
helps him
Yeah.
the action. And I think the same is
Yeah.
true of couples. Once you get into the
Yeah.
rhythm of when you get through the door,
yeah,
how do the two of you reunite after a busy day?
yeah, sure, yeah, yeah,
Up in the mornings
yeah,
together? How do
yeah,
you show appreciation and gratitude in those micro moments? I
yeah.
think it just becomes almost second nature. Still requires some conscious effort, like it does for Kane to remember those
Mm,
orders of things that he's doing,
yeah,
some deliberation there, but
yeah.
fundamentally it's about practice and about making it more based on habit rather than having to every single time it happens think, bloody hell, we're arguing again. What on earth do we do?
Yeah, yeah. And I think what I like about those sort of examples is there is built into them a recognition this is difficult and stressful. Like that's not an easy
Yes.
thing to take the pen. So, the same when people impose confidence on Haaland, but what Haaland says when he's going to take the pen is, I was nervous. You can watch him clipped. He says, I was nervous when I was taking, and that's not, oh, how unusual or what a surprise. It's like if you talk to a pro athlete, if you talk to a sports person, they are, of course, nervous before the start line, before the gun goes, before the ball is kicked or whatever. It's more a channeling thing. So in a relationship, are those conversations pleasurable or easy? I would say not. I would say they're always quite difficult and they're never my favorite bit of the relationship. But that doesn't mean they can't be done to a reasonable level of skill. So I would say to couples, like, this is going to be quite hard, right? It's simple to say these things the way you and I are talking now about skills, but it's very, very hard to do. Bit like the instructions for walking a tightrope. It's one foot in front of the other and maintain balance. Very simple to say, insanely difficult to do.
Yeah, and we don't use words that, like, if you were listening to a podcast of another couples therapist, they'd be using words like vulnerability.
Sure.
But I think it's important
Yeah.
that we're talking about similar things, which
Yeah.
is if you've been hurt, if you are upset, having those conversations where in a mature adult way with your partner are
Yeah.
really hard and you should have them. It's not like we're saying that you should hide from that and it's just all in kind of showing gratitude and behaviors, but that is a behavior, of
Yeah.
course. In a
Sure.
conversation where you're saying that thing you said hurt me and I don't want you
Yeah.
to do it again,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that is a behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'd make you right on all of that. I wouldn't even mock you.
I didn't
It's
want
really hard to do those things, isn't it? I think it's super hard because they have a psychological root. You've done them in the past and it hasn't worked. You've done them in the past, you've gotten disappointed, let down, or been hurt, or been made to feel foolish, or been made to feel like you're whiny, or you're always on about what you want, never concern for someone else. All of that sort of script comes from somewhere, but the basics of what you are going to need to do, however hard or easy it is for you, remains the same. And some of it is there does need, I think the thing that we've lost sight of in this, not in our conversation but in the wider conversation, is that requires a bit of bravery. It requires you to do it, to start it, and probably to do it badly in the first instance, and to bear that as a couple. So
yeah.
sometimes I have a positive session with couples, send them away with an idea of what they want to do differently, that they've decided upon. And my sort of parting shot is this will go wrong, this will
Give
not
each
go
other some,
right. This will
and
not
give each other
be.
some grace from that place as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I just also I would be even more ordinary about it. I mean, what skill in life is not going to go wrong, quote unquote? You're sort of learning new language, aren't you? Or you're learning to walk or acquire a skill. There are some bum notes. It's going to be a while before you can knock out even a show tune, let alone Rachmaninoff's third.
He's done it again. He's gone from football to high culture.
Renaissance man, Graham. You know that. Don't embarrass me. I'll blush.
I'm not going to test your classical music.
No, don't. No, don't.
We missed it in the efforts to keep to the theme of simplicity. Have we missed anything?
No, I don't think so. I was just taking a quick look through some notes I scribbled for myself. The only thing we haven't mentioned, we usually give them a name check, don't we? The Gottmans who do research in this area, so to have this finding, sort of don't be a jerk, that it's criticism and contempt that does for a relationship. It's not the age you marry, it's not your social socioeconomic factors. It's actually how you behave. So I mean, there is our preferred point of view on this. There's our clinical experience, I guess, of seeing the hundreds and thousands of couples we've seen between us at this point in time, but also like this is borne out in the research, like big numbers sort of make that finding real. And I suppose what's mildly interesting for anyone who's interested in attachment is that is also
Yeah,
predominantly the lens that they
yeah.
come through, but they're I think they're doing something which is, rigorous and helpful. And it's also a finding of it's common sense, isn't it? You wouldn't put it on your dating profile. You wouldn't be contemptuous and critical of the person you were seeing, and then we do those things and the relationship goes south or turns sour.
Yeah, it's really helpful. Like on Instagram, you'll see an awful lot of videos about don't date an avoidant, but
Yeah,
research suggests that they're
yeah,
as competent in relationships as anyone else. The don't be
yeah.
a dick thing is much more helpful. It's just quite surprising that the Gottmans have managed to eke out so many books on such a
They've done well, haven't they?
such a simple statement.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I agree, and I think there's a desire to do something complicated, but I think there's good, there's good reason to do things simply in this area, just as there are in other areas. Sort of in engineering, it's like it's keep it simple. Like that would be a principle in tech and project work. You're looking for the minimum viable product and then you're building and iterating on that, aren't you? There is something about, it's true in investing as well, that you're well advised to, probably put your money into an index fund that typically will outperform even the best investment funds, right? So I think in lots of different domains. I think we saw it in government, didn't we? That sort of admiring the problem, complicating a thing, talking around an issue rather than going directly to it and taking an action on it and seeing whether
Yeah,
it works. And if it works, doing more.
real indecision and risk aversion. Let's not make a decision and look like fools. It's much better if we elongate this and make it
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
There's kind of Daniel Kahneman stuff, sort of thinking fast, thinking slow, that often adding information is to add noise rather than to clarify signals. So, I mean, I think there's a good spread of, thought about keeping things simple, obvious, to the point, trying that first at least. And that's what I say to couples. Let's go at that. Let's try and do that differently. And usually what happens, if they're able to do that and lock onto it, then something does shift. And it's not easy to do, I think, for some of the reasons that you're speaking up for, that there's a long kind of antecedent and it's easy to say and hard to do. But I don't think it makes it the wrong counsel or the wrong advice. It's just we're going to need a little longer to do this, and we're going to have to think more seriously about the impediments. It's why self-help is kind of helpful to the point, at which it isn't. I think sometimes you need to get in there and it needs to be a bit more tailored. I suppose that's what you and I think we're providing at our best.
Yeah. And someone who can occasionally just help someone to tweak and take
Yeah,
a look at it from the outside and say, you might not notice that you're still getting this bit of the
yeah, yeah,
process slightly wrong. I
yeah.
think that can be enormously helpful at certain times.
It's the PT example, isn't it? I'll make this my final word. Just sort of you probably can find via AI or anywhere on the internet a set of exercises that will do the thing that you want to achieve, right? But something about having someone there that just sees your elbow coming out and just wants to do a physical adjustment and get you to feel that instantly in your muscle memory as you lift and lower the weight. That is a different thing from reading about it on a screen or in a book.
Have you got any Rachmaninoff examples to leave us with?
No, I'm afraid not.
Let's leave it there.
You'll have to wait till next week's installment.
That's such an
That's
enticement.
the cliffhanger, isn't it?
How could they not come back for more? Good to see you, Matt.
Nice to see you.
Take care. Bye.